And this is all public. You can look all this up. It's in the mainstream press. They wrote about it a while ago. They don't talk about it so much anymore. But the Clean Break Memo was a memo written in 1996 by Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, and David Wormser. These were the three big people who compiled it. Pearl he supervised the compilation of this memo, the Clean Break Memo. And this was a memo about Israel's national security written for then Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. He was Prime Minister at the time in 96. Clean Break Memo was written by these three people for Bibi Netanyahu. And what was in the Clean Break Memo? They said it was time for a new strategy for Israel. They said that Israel's foreign policy for decades had been comprehensive peace. That was the name of their foreign policy before. The idea was that when Israel was founded in 1948, they have faced perpetual contests against their legitimacy in the region. They faced a war for independence in 1948, a war in 1956, a war in 1967, a war in 1973, or was it 71? I believe it was 73. 4 wars and then 2 intifadas. And so in 1996, they said, look, this hasn't been working out. We previously had tried doing comprehensive peace agreements with these Arab countries. For example, the Camp David Accords in 1978, which solidified peace between Israel and Egypt. In 1996, they said, we can't really do this anymore. It's not working. We can't make peace with all these different countries. Additionally, we can't dominate Lebanon. We're pretty much secure to our southern border. We've made peace with Egypt. We've made peace with Saudi Arabia. We've made peace with Jordan, with the Hashemite kingdom there. The one trick is Syria and Lebanon on our northern border. Syria, they had been in a perpetual state of war since 1948. In Lebanon, they had essentially also been in a perpetual state of war since 1948 as well. And particularly in the case of Lebanon, when Israel declared independence in 48, the Palestinians, about 750,000 Palestinians, fled Israel into Lebanon because Israel was like massacring and genociding them. So they went to Lebanon. Israel fought with Lebanon for a long time. There were border skirmishes in the War of 67. Israel went up into Lebanon, into Syria. They went down into Egypt. There was a civil war in Lebanon. There was the Palestinian Liberation Organization formed in the 1970s that was driven out of Jordan and then into Lebanon, where they waged attacks to Israel. And so basically Israel said, look, in 1996, we're not going to be able to have peace with all these countries. We have this problem on our northern border. How do we fix it? Let's rethink all of it. And so in the Clean Break Memo, Douglas Feith, Richard Pearl, or was it Robert or Richard? It was Pearl, okay? Douglas Feith, I think it was Richard Pearl, David Wormser, they put together the Clean Break Memo to address these problems. And they say, we have to transcend the Middle East. Can't make peace with them. We have to transcend them. How do we do it? We have to secure our northern border. How do we do that? We have Hezbollah in Lebanon. We have Syria to our north. Well, how do we take them out? They say, well, first we have to take out Iraq because Iraq is a Ba'athist country. Syria is a Ba'athist country. Maybe if we take out Iraq first, that'll cause an insurrection among the Ba'athist clerics in Syria. Or maybe if we take out Iraq, it'll lessen support for Syria, because although they were both Ba'athists, they were kind of rivals. They were allies in the smallest and least sense. But they say, this is in the memo, we'll destroy Iraq as a means to then destroy Syria. And all of this will serve the goal of defeating Hezbollah. And while we're at it, we'll also destroy Iran, because we will never defeat Hezbollah. We will never dominate Lebanon. We will never control our northern border until we destroy Syria, which backs Hezbollah, destroy Iran, which backs Hezbollah and the PLO, and destroy Iraq, which backs them. And that's the memo. Does that sound familiar? Does that policy sound familiar to you? Well, that's a pretty loose association. They said this in 1996, and policy is seen basically to follow that. We took out Iraq. Syria was basically it was in front of us. That was served up to us on a silver platter for us to take out. Looks like we pulled back, thanks to, I guess, the Obama administration, the Trump administration. Haven't gone to war in Syria just yet, but they've been calling for war in Syria. They've been calling for regime change in Syria. They've been calling for war in Iran all along. So, okay, that's a loose association. They say they want these things. It kind of mirrors what the media says and what the defense establishment says, but I'm sure that's not, that doesn't really prove causation. What if I told you that the people that wrote that memo ended up working in the Bush administration? What if I told you that the people that wrote that memo, that supervised that memo being written for Bibi Netanyahu in 1996, not only worked for George W. Bush, but worked in the Defense Department? Not only worked in the Defense Department, but organized a special office in the Pentagon to fabricate intelligence that led us into the Iraq War. What if I told you that that office had somebody employed in it who was indicted for espionage for passing secrets about Iran through AIPAC to the Israeli government? What if I told you all that? What if I told you that all the mainstream media doesn't even hide that? That you could find that in the New York Times, you could find that in Mother Jones. Would you call me a crazy person if I told you all that? Because it's true. Douglas Feith, Richard Pearl, those names may sound familiar because they worked in the Defense Department. They created the Office of Special Plans in the Pentagon, which was tasked specifically with fabricating evidence, exaggerating evidence that tied Saddam Hussein to Al-Qaeda, which, you know, the public was a little bit upset about something called 9/11, so they tried to connect that to Iraq for regime change in Iraq. And let me read you a few things about the Office of Special Plans from Wikipedia. Let me read you just a few things from The Guardian, and this is in Wikipedia, about the Office of Special Plans. This was the office created in the Pentagon by people in the Defense Department: Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, Worms, who served under Bolton, who's a national security chief now, and also under Dick Cheney. They wrote Clean Break Memo in 96. This is their office. I'm about to describe to you the office by these people who wrote the Clean Break Memo, later created this office in the Bush administration. This is from The Guardian. Quote, "The Office of Special Plans was an open and largely unfiltered conduit to the White House, not only for the Iraqi opposition, it also forged close ties to a parallel ad hoc intelligence operation inside Ariel Sharon's office in Israel, the Prime Minister of Israel, specifically to bypass Mossad and provide the Bush administration with more alarmist reports on Saddam's Iraq than Mossad was prepared to authorize." So, in summary, the Office of Special Plans was a conduit through which the Prime Minister of Israel's office shared intelligence that was so alarmist about Saddam Hussein, so extreme, so unverified, that even the Mossad would not give it to the U.S. government. That's the Office of Special Plans. The people that wrote the Clean Break Memo for Bibi Netanyahu that said, hey, let's destroy Iraq, they later created an office that, in the words of The Guardian, served as a back channel for the office of the Prime Minister of Israel to pass along intelligence that was so outrageous about Saddam Hussein that not even the Mossad, not even Israel's intelligence service would greenlight. That's the Office of Special Plans. Another quote. Quote, "None of the Israelis who came were cleared into the Pentagon through normal channels," said one source familiar with the visits. "Instead, they were waved in on Mr. Feith's authority without having to fill in the usual forms." You got Israelis coming through into this office without having to fill in the forms. Last one, quote, "The exchange of information continued a long-standing relationship with Mr. Feith and other Washington neoconservatives had with Israel's Likud party." That's Bibi Netanyahu's party, the far-right party in Israel. So that's the Office of Special Plans. What a winner. What a country we live in, right? So you hear this stuff about Israel. Is that, am I an anti-Semite for saying that? Am I an anti-Semite for delivering to you these facts? So look at these connections and patterns, because Jacob Wohl will get on my program and say it's just plain Jew hatred. It's just plain bigotry. It's just plain anti-Semitism. To connect all these dots. To say, hey, the same people who wrote a memo in 96 for the Israeli government saying, hey, it's a good idea to destroy Iraq, then served in the Bush administration, presided over the invasion of Iraq. They served as a puppet for the Israeli government from the mainstream press. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I'm a hater. Well, you might as well, trusted flaggers might as well flag the video. I've gone full fash, right? I'm literally Hitler, I guess. Because I don't want to see America involved in another $6 trillion war for another nation's interest so this country can secure their northern border. Think of the hypocrisy. We went to war in Iraq to secure Israel's northern border. We're going to go to war in Syria and Iran to secure Israel's northern border. We can't secure our southern border, and we're going to war. $25 billion is too much for a 1,000, half the length of our southern border. $25 billion is a bridge too far, too much money. $6 trillion and an additional 2.5 for Iran? No cost is too high to secure Israel's northern border. And not just secure it, it's plenty secure. Hezbollah versus the IDF? Not really a difficult bet. Not really a gamble there. Who's going to win that one? Not just secure, overwhelm, dominate, pave the way for something greater maybe. Who knows? What do I know? I'm 19. What do I know? What would I know? I'm just a kid, right? Everyone thought they knew it all when they were my age. It's an act. It's pandering. So that's why we're mad. That's why we're a little bit angry. That's why we're a little mad about it. And by the way, grand irony of it all. Why are we going to war in Iran, right? Why? Well, we're not going to war in Iran quite yet. They say they want us to pull out of the nuclear deal because there's a deadline coming up May 12th. Trump decertified the Iran nuclear deal in October. There's a deadline coming up May 12th that if Trump, he has to make a decision whether or not he'll reapply sanctions to Iran. That could jeopardize the deal. There's been a lot of talk. Macron used his 3-day state visit to the United States last week to convince Trump to stay in the deal. Merkel did the same thing on Friday. Israel obviously thinks something else. So it's not war just yet, but let's say it is war. Why are we pulling out of the deal with Iran? Why do we have a deal with Iran? Why would we go to war with Iran? Because they have a clandestine nuclear program. They have an illegal nuclear program. Tell me, what's the only country in the Middle East? The only country in the Middle East, not just with a nuclear capability, which is the ability to build nuclear weapons, but the only country in the Middle East with a nuclear arsenal that brags openly about it. 200 warheads pointing at Iran. Who is it? For 50 years, Israel has had an illegal nuclear program, never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and in fact, how did Israel get its nuclear program? Where did they get the uranium? They don't have uranium mines in Israel. They stole it from America. Look up the Apollo affair, where the CIA director said that there is no doubt in his mind that the Israelis stole our uranium right out of our power plants in Pennsylvania. They stole uranium right out from Europe. They created this elaborate plan where they took something called Plumbot and they had it shipped through cargo ships, which were created or rather ordered by fake shell companies. So they stole their uranium from Europe. They stole it from the United States. Hey, there was something called the Stuxnet virus in the early days of the 2000s. The Stuxnet virus was a cyber weapon developed by the Israelis. And this cyber weapon was used to set back Iran's nuclear program a few years. Do you want to know the reason the Stuxnet virus worked? Many pro-Israel people will say the only reason, or rather one of the reasons that we give aid to Israel is they develop advanced weapons. For example, the Stuxnet virus. And only Israel could have developed the Stuxnet virus. Why were they the only country? Why were they the only country who could develop a cyber weapon to attack Iran's nuclear infrastructure? Want to know why? Want to know why? Because Israel stole the same nuclear infrastructure blueprints from Germany as Iran. They stole the same ones. Iran got them from a Pakistani named A.Q. Khan. He stole the blueprints from Germany. Israel stole the same blueprints from Germany. So why was Israel uniquely able to target Iran's illegal nuclear program? Because they stole the same blueprints, doing the same thing, except they get a pass. They get a pass.